welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundy, we're back. We got another two teams that we're going to cover today. I believe you said you had one quick thing that we were going to do at the start before we get into those two teams.
Yeah, so anyone who tuned in the last episode, we're doing Minnesota and Seattle today as our two teams as we continue to run through all 32 teams as we kind of do an off-season review and then kind of like maybe a little bit of a preview, kind of looking at the outlook for the team next year. Aside from this, the only thing is we're going to talk a bit about the Marty Necas extension with Carolina because that kind of happened just recently before our last episode. So, and we didn't give a shit to talk about at the time. So there's that. This is a fun game. We like to do these fun games. We did it before. We're doing it again. All right. So you ready for this, Braden?
I'm so ready. I'm pumped.
We're starting off hot here. So it was recently announced today that Penn State had a player commit to them. He is his name is Alexander Karmanov. Have you heard the name before?
Ooh, I feel like I've heard the name, but I don't have an affiliation with it. I don't really know.
Okay, so he is a 2008 baby, which means he is 16 years old right now. He just turned 16 in March of this year. He is from Russia. And played last year parts of in a couple different leagues over in Russia. So this kid is committed to going to Penn State. So he's planning on coming to North America. He's a 16-year-old defenseman. I want you to guess how tall he is and how much he weighs at 16 years old.
Oh no.
And I will give you three guesses. All right, there's no wiggle room on the height. You got to get the height dead on, but I will give you within 5 pounds.
Okay,
I'll give you within 5 pounds on the weight.
Are you just saying yes or no, or are you saying like higher or lower, or am I just guessing here?
What do you want? Do you want me to say yes or no, or do you want me to say higher or lower? To make it easier for you, because I want to give you a chance here.
Let's do higher or lower. I only got 3 guesses. Why not?
Okay. So remember, he's 16, he's 16? A defenseman, and he's from Russia.
God.
What's 16. Your first guess?
I mean, so he's going to grow more, but like you wouldn't be asking if it wasn't either freakishly small or freakishly tall, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm going to start big. I'm going to say he's already 6'6", 6'6", and I don't even know what a good weight would be to guess, but let's start with like 220, I guess. Maybe he's a
higher for both.
Higher for both.
Higher for both. And this is also coming off Elite Prospects as well. So like they know their shit on there. That's the most reputable source for young prospects as well.
Yeah. Okay, well...
So more than 6'6", 220.
I want to say 6'8" is the tallest player to ever play in the NHL.
I think Char was 6'9".
Or maybe it's like the tallest currently playing or something, but like that's getting to some of the tallest guys. Like, let's go 6'8". I got to really bump it up. 6'8", 245.
So... Just to clarify, what you said previously, Chara was 6'9", 250.
Okay, I'm going just below that on both accounts. 6'8", 245.
More.
Higher. For both?
Higher for both.
There's no way, dude.
Higher for both.
All right, that's it. We are going. I have to get the height exactly right. It's so goofy.
You got to get just within 5 pounds of the weight, though. So you got room to work with the weight.
7 feet is 3 inches taller than Zdeno Chara.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess 7 foot even, and I'm going to guess 273 pounds.
Lower on both.
Ah, shit.
He is 16 years old, 6'11", 251 pounds.
Oh,
This kid is fucking Andre the Giant at 16 years old, before he's even come over to North America or anything. This kid is an absolute freak. He might have not have even hit his full growth spurt yet.
well, no, there's no way. He's 16. Like most people, especially people who grow early, will probably stop more. But like he's probably, if he's 6'11", he's gonna hit 7 foot. He's gonna grow another inch in his being 16 years old, 17, 18 years old years. Like he's gonna get at least one more. That's barbaric.
I'm checking this now. You actually did get the height right.
Oh,
Elite Prospects is listing him as 6'11", but all of the news sources putting this out, because it just happened today, they're all listing him as 7 feet tall now. So
I wonder if they're just adding an inch to because it looks better on a headline, or if that's the case.
Yeah, because I'm not sure the last time when he's kind of scouted and like when his profile's updated, but so I mean, whatever you want to slice it, 6'11", 7 feet, that's already taller than the tallest guy to ever play in the NHL.
Yeah, at 16. Oh, 16. That's wild.
And 251. Like,
yeah, as soon as you started having me guess, I was like thinking like, I wonder if it's one of those things where he's going to be super tall, but he's going to be like 190 pounds. Like he's going to be like, like he was going to be like skin and bones kind of thing. No, he's just a unit.
Just fucking cock and bones. No, yeah, like just an absolute, like, yeah. When I saw that, because all I saw the first thing was like, I saw, okay, this kid's committed to Penn State, but then I saw everybody being like, no, you got to go check out his elite prospects. And I was like, all right, whatever. I go and look, I'm like, okay, his numbers aren't that impressive. There's not a lot of stats there, not a lot of games played. So what are we looking at here? And then I just like, okay, I got to find it. I start looking, I'm like, I see his height and his weight. I'm like, oh, okay, that's it. That's what we're looking at with this kid. We're not here looking at his game-breaking skill or anything. We're looking at it because he's a fucking monster.
And that's awesome, dude. You love
that's exactly what he is. So that is a name to keep an eye on. If you're a hockey fan, you love looking at prospects, just keep an eye on Alexander Karmanov, because like this kid's planning on going to North America, and if you're a kid from Russia doing that, you've got your eyes set on going to the NHL, and that's a name you gotta keep an eye on. Really, really hope he's a first round pick too. I don't know if he will be or anything, but like, could you imagine a kid that big, like going up and shaking Gary Bettman's hand?
But they're not doing it in person anymore, are they?
So,
oh no, they announced that they were going to do one more year, didn't they?
No. So what it sounds like is it's going to be, it sounds like it's kind of going to be like what the NFL is doing now. Like they're still going to have a main hub of where the whole thing takes place, and then if certain players who want to go to the whole draft festivities, and they probably know they're going in the first round, they can still choose to go, and then they get drafted and they can still go up on the stage and get a jersey and whatnot.
Yeah,
but it allows for like all the teams, like you're not going to have the draft floor. Like teams are, again, like the NFL, teams are going to be able to just go to their head office or wherever it is at the arena or whatever, and just do the draft from there and just call it in and all that. And It also allows for players, kind of similar to the COVID year, like they could just choose to stay at home with their family and just watch it on TV and, get the call of, you're being drafted, be prepared, like it's about to happen type thing. So there is still going to be a main hub. And a lot of people just wanted to keep being the Sphere in Vegas. But it's not going to be like all the teams, like scouts and GM and everything all there. Like it's just going to be the picks are called in. Gary Bettman will be the one to go up there and make the selection, and the player gets to go up and only get a picture with Gary Bettman, which
yeah, dude,
fucking sucks. But like that's the way it is now. That's what it's looking like for the NHL draft.
Is he gonna start doing like the Triple H like point? He's gonna like pose for
Uh,
all the pictures and be pointing at him.
okay, you know what? If Gary Bettman did that, I'd fuck with that. If Gary Bettman pulled that shit off, I'd be like, you know what? Fuck yeah, dude. Just stick around forever. Like, don't leave. Just stay in the NHL. Like, we love you if you're doing this. Because that would be fantastic.
He's like clearly wearing shoulder pads underneath his suit. Like he's never had shoulders like this. He looks like older and more out of shape, but he's like got these massive arms.
He just looks like a big muscle mommy out of nowhere. Which, again, Gary Bettman, if you do that, I will fully support you forever.
Well, there we go.
Braden just reminded me here that we do have another extension, though, so we actually do have two that we can talk about here. Braden, which one do you want to rip first here?
Do you want to talk about the Marty Necas one? I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about it a bit last episode. Martin Necas obviously re-signed with the Carolina Hurricanes as an RFA. It was kind of looking like he was probably going to get traded, and apparently there's a really good offer on the table for him, and Carolina turned it down, and now we know he signed a 2-year extension with the Hurricanes, 6.5 AAV, which I think is a very fair deal for him, for the team, good bridge deal.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really kind of what it is, like a nice bridge deal for both sides to keep both sides happy, pretty much.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's all that could get done with them, being in the situation that they're in of, he wants out, but nobody wants to pay too much for him, and also nobody else. It seems like he wants that first power play time. He wants that first line time, and it doesn't look like that's out there really. So,
Yeah,
like
no.
he wants to be the guy on a lot of teams, and you're not going to put together a winning team with Marty Necas being the guy. Like,
Yeah,
if he's
no.
your
He's a good player, but
if he's your second, third, fourth, or fifth best guy on your team, that could maybe be fine. But, yeah, him wanting to be head honcho somewhere seems like a tall order. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where he ends up, because clearly, at some point here, like I think his days have to be numbered in Carolina, right? Like, there's no way he plays out this contract and then re-signs for 8 years or anything. Like, surely at some point in the next few years he's moved.
Yeah, but by the time this deal is done, I don't expect him to be with the team, or when this deal is up, I expect him to be moved, because yeah, like it's just kind of clear there. It's like Carolina's window is like kind of right now, like within the next 1, 2, 3 years, like you're hoping to have won a cup, because by then you're going to be in trouble, because obviously Brent Burns isn't going to be around. Jordan Stahl probably isn't going to be around. Jacob Slavin's going to be that much older. And with defensive defensemen, we've seen that, their longevity isn't the highest. And then again, like just all their other players are going to be older. I know they got a lot of good prospects coming up, but nothing's a guarantee. So, and they still have Seth Jarvis, who's an RFA. He's not signed currently. I expect him, honestly, to probably just get a deal similar to what Necas has, like in that range of, 2 years within that 6.5 range. And then it's like, we're going all in these next 2 years, and it's kind of cup or bust. And then you got to make some tough decisions there, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty much how it's going to go. I think writing's pretty much on the wall for that one.
Yeah.
And then the other extension news that we had, Caden Gooley signed an extension with the Montreal Canadiens, 6 years at a cap hit of 5.55 per year. This is a fantastic deal for the Canadiens. Like,
yeah,
I don't see any way this guy isn't at least a top 4 defenseman. He could potentially be a top D pairing guy, and that is an absolute bargain for that. But even if he is just top 4, 5.55 is very reasonable for that, especially with the cap going up. So I think it's that. I definitely don't think he would be like a 1D. Like, I don't think he would be like, on a winning playoff team, I don't think he would be the best defenseman on a team, but I think he could definitely be, almost the maybe not to this guy's level, but kind of what Sergachev was in Tampa to Victor Hedman, kind of that second in command on the defense.
So, and again, I love Caden Gooley, but if he ends up being a top pair guy for Montreal, something's gone wrong. Because their plan is obviously, from what we're seeing now, their plan and what they're hoping they eventually can get is that their top pair will be Lane Hudson and David Reinbacher. Like that's what
fair.
their hope is, that can be their top pair. And then if you've got Caden Gooley, you can put, assuming he continues to, keep going in the direction he's going, you could put whoever you want on the right side with him, and that's a great second pair.
Yeah.
But again, and I love him, but if he's on the top pair, that means something has gone wrong with Lane Hudson, and
that's true.
And that's not good for Montreal. That's really not good for Montreal, because
that's fair. I wasn't thinking about that with their up and coming guys. I was thinking in a vacuum, I could see a team doing well if he's the second best defenseman. That third defenseman would have to not be much worse than him, but I think it could work.
Well, and the thing
either way,
is I
love this deal for them. That's great value for 6 years.
And Caden Gooley, he's even if he's on the second pair, he's going to be the guy getting lots of the penalty kill time. Assuming Lane Hudson pans out, he's going to be the power play guy, and Caden Gooley is going to be the penalty kill guy on that left side. So
yeah,
and for like you said, at that contract 5.5, that's a great deal. Montreal has really managed their cap actually very good when it comes to paying their young guys. They're
really well.
Unless any of these guys completely just craters and just doesn't develop and actually regresses, all of these contracts, like the Suzuki, Caulfield, Sapkowski, now Gooley, they're all going to be steals.
They're all playing at the contract's value, I would argue, at this point. And they're all still growing. Unless they actively regress, they're not even going to be bad contracts. So that's pretty solid.
Right.
And the reason I had you doing the Natchez extension a second ago is because I was bringing up the other Canadiens news, because I remembered there was a couple other ones. Arbor Jacki got a 2-year extension at 1.3 AAV cap hit. That's pretty good for them, For a rebuilding team, man, he brings good vibes. So I don't mind that at all. And then Justin Barron for 2 years at 1.15 mil. This one's less of a needle mover, obviously, but the Canadiens aren't going to hit the cap anytime soon. And
I think that's really just
solid
kind of
players around. Always
their bottom pair.
Solid.
I think that's their bottom pair is just kind of locked up there now. You've got Jacki and you got Barron. That's your 5-6. Yeah, that's terrific right there. Obviously, Montreal's going to be featured later, more in depth. But I'm curious to see how their defense plays out, because they've now kind of got their top 6 locked in. So, and they kind of got some young guys coming up. So it's can any of these young guys crack the lineup now with these deals they've given out? Or I'm curious to see how that kind of plays out for Montreal. So I think Montreal's ready to take that next step now. They're ready to try to start contending again here.
I want to say no, but their team's starting to look better, and man,
I don't see them making the playoffs, obviously.
But it's got to be tough to be Columbus,
being
dude. They're the only team in the East that you can pencil in to not be good this year.
Yeah.
And even then, they have enough guys they could surprise.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's no team that Columbus obviously is the weak link of the East, but when you're looking at it, it's not like you're looking over at the Western, okay, we know Chicago and San Jose are going to just fucking suck. That's your bottom 2. You can kind of say Columbus, but it's also Columbus isn't as
and
bad as those
Anaheim
other
in
teams.
there pretty easy as well, not for too much
I
longer.
Probably would. I don't know if a lot of people would, but I would probably still throw Anaheim in there.
I don't think they're that low, but I don't think they move up the rankings too. I think they'll have a lot more points than those teams, but I don't think they're going to be many slots ahead of them in the standings.
Yeah, I'm not actively looking at Anaheim and I'm oh, they're way better than Columbus. No.
I just scrolled up on Montreal's Puckpedia here, and this year they have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 2 fourths. Bro, they got a bunch of picks.
Yeah. So they can either use those picks or they can use those picks to try and make a deal or something, because I've heard that, again, we don't know what's going on with Zegras, but I've heard that Montreal is still kind of sniffing around Zegras, and apparently they're kind of the front runner on a Patrick Laine deal now that he's been cleared to return to action. Everything, he's now back in the NHL and everything. So obviously now Columbus can kind of start shopping him. Sounds like Montreal's kind of right at the front there.
I get they haven't been good in a bit and they want to make a splash, but I think the last thing they need is to take a gamble on something like that. I think the rebuild's going so well, you don't need to gamble on that. Go out and get a guy that you know is good. For sure will be good for your team.
The 3 teams I've heard around Line A is Montreal, Washington, and the Islanders are kind of the 3 sniffing around him. So
Washington and Islanders seem to make a lot of sense as well.
Yeah. So something to just keep in mind there for if it happens, if he goes to one of those teams. I called it first. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
All right. The long road to what this episode is all about. Braden, where do you want to start? Do we want to start with Seattle or do we want to start with Minnesota?
I will start with Seattle because you started with most of the last stuff we've done. So I will do it.
Hit us with it here. What are we looking at with Seattle?
All right. So first, let's take a look at the Seattle Kraken stats from last year. The Seattle Kraken last year, they missed the playoffs. They ended the season with 81 points, tied with the Calgary Flames. They had only 34 wins, 35 losses, and 13 overtime losses. They only had 4 less wins than the Flames, which is pretty rough. Their goal differential was -19. Obviously not good, but not horrendous. I mean, there's a couple of teams on here with well below 100, so it's not completely terrible, but they definitely still have some good players, and also they have really good depth. Looking at their
they do have good depth.
Their top scorers from the last year, Jared McCann had 29 goals and 62 points. Oliver Bjorkstrand, 20 goals, 59 points. Vince Dunn had 46 points, but as a defenseman, he only had him in 59 games. So if he can play a full season this year and avoid any more injuries, because he missed just over 30 games, he could definitely take a step and be that's almost a 70-point pace for a defenseman. So I definitely think he could be very, very solid for them there. I don't believe at this time, I can search up here to check, but I don't believe the Kraken have a captain at the moment. And I wonder if Vince Dunn might be the next guy to get the captaincy for them. But yeah, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys before any of them have less than 20 points. And one of those
Vince
guys
Dunn for captain though?
Yeah, I definitely think he.
I think over a guy like Eberle though. I don't know.
I
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Vince Dunn's a bad option, but I think when you're looking at Seattle, don't get me wrong. First of all, I think they do need. I think
Eberle's going to be. I don't think Eberle should ever be a team's captain. At this point, no offense to him, but I think he should have an A anywhere he goes. But I don't think he should be the cap. I'm not a huge fan of putting the C on guys when they're, he's 33 years old. Putting it on him that late, he's not going to have it for that long. And, it's different when it's a situation, you're putting it on a Michael Backlund who's been with the team forever. Or if Tampa puts it on Victor Hedman, who's been there forever. But a team like this, I think they could use with a captain of the future. And if it doesn't go to Matty Beniers, I think it could go to Vince Dunn.
Well, that's the thing. You know what I think really hurt Seattle was they were hoping for Matty Beniers to build off his Calder, his rookie year, and just take that next step and be even better next year and whatnot. And then it's like, hey, now we can like make him the captain and whatnot. But after he kind of took a couple steps back and really wasn't their top guy and whatnot, it's kind of like it's hard to justify naming him the captain now. Like, so I think that kind of puts Seattle in a tough spot. Because like now what do you do?
That desperately needs a captaincy. So if they really don't have one,
but like how long can you? But that's the thing. Like you can't just keep running, going no cap. Because like they named one right away in Giordano just to trade him, like pretty quickly. So it's like there was no need to even name him. Like you would have been better off just riding without one. But now that you've had one and you've traded, like eventually you gotta give it to someone and kind of give your team more identity.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I didn't know Jared McCann was only 27. So honestly, he would not be a terrible pick either. Current franchise leader in goals and points, I'm fairly certain.
You'd be correct.
But yeah, I think if they start this season and don't have one, if any one of Matty Beniers, Vince Dunn, or Jared McCann has a really strong start, I wouldn't have a problem with any of those guys getting it.
Well, I think if they don't name one going into this season, like regardless, doesn't matter who, if they don't name anyone, then I think it's pretty much clear, right? They're just going to ride another year and then they're going to give it to Beniers after. They're just going to ride out one more year and then they're going to give it to Beniers when they sign him to his probably 8-year deal and just be like, boom, there we go.
Because
Because at that point, like you're not going to be like, we're not naming one, but now we're going to extend Beniers, but like we're going to give it to another young guy that holds on to it for the foreseeable future. Like that's kind of the way I'm viewing it. If it doesn't go to someone else, like outside Beniers, and it doesn't go to anyone, then I think it's kind of a lock that Matty gets it at some point within the next year. Then
that's fair. I was thinking of it as maybe by Christmas time, around late December, if Beniers has had a solid first half, they give it to him. But I guess, if you're going into contract negotiations, if you just gave him the captaincy, it's pretty hard to, you lose a lot of leverage.
It puts you in a bind. It puts you in, it puts you in a bind.
Yeah. So I could see them doing it for any of those guys in the off season. But I guess once the season starts, they're probably holding on to it till next off season.
That's kind of the way I view it. Like, could be wrong, but that's just kind of the way that I
like that. I like that.
And it makes sense. Like that's the route a lot of teams are taking. Like you saw that with Montreal. Obviously, Suzuki wasn't drafted by him or anything, but he was kind of their young best prospect. We saw it back with McDavid's not on the same level as Beniers, but same thing with McDavid. We're going to see it with Bedard. Probably going to see it with Celebrini in San Jose, assuming that Couture is done, or at the very least only has 1 or 2 years left in him. So I think that's kind of the way teams are going, is they're fine riding that time without a captain when they know, like, hey, we've got our guy who's gonna get it. It's just a matter of when does it make the most sense to kind of do it.
Yeah, that's fair. But they don't have any game breakers right now that are reaching that potential right now. I think they've got a couple guys that could. I think if Vince Dunn takes a few more steps, he could be really good. I think he could crack the top 10 defensemen in the league if he really puts it together. But as of right now, they're a team that scores by committee. One area that they are, very underratedly strong is in net, though. Last season, their starter was Joey Decord. He played 50 games, and he had a 916. A lot of people... He wasn't a finalist for the Vezina, right?
No. He didn't sniff any of the ballots even.
A lot of people had him as possibly the third guy.
No, I wouldn't even consider that.
And he had a very solid year.
He did have a solid year, but
this past year, the Kraken were bad, and he put up a 916 with them. Like over 50 games. That's really solid.
The thing is like if you're looking at Joey Decord, you can't pick him because Charlie Lindgren made so much more sense. not only better numbers, but also his team actually made the playoffs strictly basically because of him. So I it's no disrespect to Joey Decor, but it's like if
But
you were looking at him, it's like you have to pick Charlie
no,
Lindgren
but he
too.
had to get some consideration. A guy who did that, you have to at least consider him.
How many games did he play?
50.
Oh shit! Yeah, actually at 50.
I think I don't think he was the starter at the start of the year. I kind of think he stole the net from Grubauer.
So can everybody
who
finally
played
get on the bus
36.
with me that Grubauer is actually not that good? I've
don't.
always said it.
I don't know.
Everybody
who
else
was
said
it.
no, he's good. I
don't.
think he's the guy.
I don't know who was ever even saying he was the guy.
Everybody was like, just
I've never been on the Grubauer train.
like-
he didn't. He was
Nah, there's-
clearly the odd man out when he was a Vezina finalist in 2020.
people's shorts were dripping when they saw that Seattle grabbed Grubauer in their first offseason. And it was like, I was always just sitting there like, why? Like,
He was fresh off a Vezina third place season, very in large part to his win
he was on
column.
the Avs.
It was
Yeah,
his
he
win
was on
column with the Avs. Look at
Like,
the
that's like we're
voting;
sitting
it
here
wasn't
now,
even
like, oh,
close.
Georgiev, like, no, we all know Georgiev's he's in the bottom like third of goalies. Like, he probably doesn't
Of
reach
starters,
even the
yeah.
top 20 in terms of starters. Yeah, it was the team effect, and that's what I said.
But Grubauer, I never thought he was elite like some people, but I did think he was a starter. But he's been
I saw him as like
in
a
Seattle.
fringe starter. Like, he was a guy that, like, you could rely on him for 35, maybe 40 games at most. But it's like he's not the guy you can put all your eggs in his basket and be like, hey,
Definitely not that. I thought you could play him for 50 games and get a 900, a 905 save percentage and call it a day.
But then you ain't making the playoffs. Most likely. Unless your backup's like Charlie Lindgren, which then you probably do.
Yeah. And they a lot of people forget they still got Chris Drieger. Or at least had him this last year. I don't think they have many.
I was gonna say no. He went back.
He had 2 games played
Florida.
for him and had a 917. He went back to Florida.
How tough is that for Chris Drieger? He was like drafted, or well, not like it claimed in the expansion draft by Seattle. It was gonna be like, okay, he's actually, he was looking really good with.
I thought he was gonna be great.
Florida and everything, and it was kind of like, okay, he's gonna be the starter for Seattle. Like, in his last year with Florida, he played 23 games. He had a 927 save percentage, 207 goals against, 3 shutouts. He went 14-6-3. The year before, he played 12 games with Florida, a 938 save percentage, a 205 goals against, 1 shutout, and he went 7-2-1.
Dude,
so like this guy was looking like he was going to be a stud in the league, and then Seattle grabs him, and then it's like, okay, but now we're getting Grubauer.
Yeah.
And then
they bought when they really didn't need to. If you would have told me back then, at like right when Seattle entered the league and did their expansion draft, I would have. If you told me that sometime in the next 5 years he wins a Vezina trophy, I would have believed you. Like, I thought he was going to be one of the next elite goalies in the league. So it really sucks to see the way his development's gone, and he still puts up decent numbers sometimes, but I don't know if it's the consistency. I don't know if it's the team he's on, the system they play, but
he was the next Martin Jones. And I mean that kind of from the sense that they were both former Calgary Hitmen goalie. But like Martin Jones, he was, finally got his chance in the league and looked really good and was a stud with the Kings, but it was like, okay, but he's, we want to see his full potential here, but he's stuck behind, again, a very good Jonathan Quick at the time. Like, that's back in, 2014-15 when the Kings are Stanley Cup champions. And then he gets traded, but it's like, hey, now he's gone to Boston. Like, he's behind Tuukka Rask. Like, I want to see this guy play. I'm a big fan of him. And then the whole part of him going to Boston was Boston flips him to San Jose. And it's like, okay, now he's in a place where he's the starter. Like, he's the guy. And obviously, longevity wasn't in the plan for him, but for a span of, 5 years, he was a very, very solid, great, consistent goalie and put up great numbers. And I
Yeah.
thought we were going to get that with Drieger, but Seattle said, nope, sucks to be you. And but he's back in Florida now. So maybe he can kind of get his groove back going with the Panthers.
Maybe, but they got Bobrovsky is pretty solidly in the net again, and they also have Spencer Knight, who's
Oh fuck, I forgot they had Spencer Knight.
I
Yeah.
don't even know what they got going there. Man,
Yeah.
they really had because they also had Devin Levi at a point, right?
Yeah, he was the
They
big
had
part in the
yeah,
Reinhardt deal.
so they had Spencer Knight, Devin Levi, and Chris Drieger at different points. While on top of it, at some point they went out and signed Bobrovsky to a $10 million
Yeah.
contract.
Do you think
Do they?
Spencer Knight maybe gets moved? Actually, no, we'll save that. We'll save that for when we
We'll
look at
save it.
Florida.
Spoiler, maybe. Um, I do think the Kraken are one team that a lot of people could be sleeping on this next year. Um, Actually, I think one of my bold predictions might have even been that make they make the playoffs. Uh,
I
this
could
this
see it though,
upcoming this year.
being in a kind of in a shitty Pacific division. Like, I don't think it's out of the question.
Yeah, like they have a lot of really young guys that if they can all take decent steps, they could potentially be really good next year. They got where they got here. They got Matty Beniers, who if he takes that next step, like he took a decent step back last year. He still had 37 points in 77 games. Plays the full 82. He probably gets around 40. They got Ty Cartier, who's 22, kind of came out of nowhere last year. 20 points for 11 goals, which isn't too bad. If he can up that a bit, that'd be really nice for them. They got obviously Shane Wright, who only played 8 games for them last year. 4 goals, 5 points. He wasn't abysmal in those games.
Yeah,
That's
no.
that's obviously only 8 games, but that's a 40 goal pace over an entire season.
Yeah.
Like they got some guys with some clear talent there. If they can really string a bit of it together and catch some magic, I think they could make the playoffs. I think they could.
I
I
mean,
definitely think they could sneak in that wild card 2, maybe wild card 1, depending.
I think they're definitely one of the most improved teams. Like you're looking at, what they had. They didn't really lose a whole lot, during free agency or anything massive. But then you bring in Brandon Montour, you bring in Chandler Stevenson, yeah, you bring in Josh Maher as like kind of a depth piece, and you re-up Tolvanen to keep him around, who's been good
Yeah,
for them. Like
yeah, he was
they've
another guy that could take a huge step. That
yeah,
I
like
was
they've
thinking
only
of, like,
done things that bolster the team right now. Like you're not again, like kind of going back to last episode, and you're looking at Winnipeg and like pieces that they lost. Seattle really didn't. There was nothing major that they lost. So
yeah, they lost
I
some
mean,
complementary pieces, but they gained a lot of you know kind of core pieces. Not maybe core going forward in the future for a long time and stuff, but like guys that will be very important to their success in the next 2-3 years.
yeah, like
So
in the now, they've definitely improved. And again, in a weak Pacific, I fully expect Seattle to take a bigger step forward, especially that if Beniers can, kind of come back to what we've seen, and if Shane Wright can,
yeah, yeah,
make
and
that jump to the NHL and be a full time guy, which I think he's got to at this point now.
yeah, yeah. I think he's going to. If he doesn't, I think people are. I mean, people obviously are already saying he's a bust because people are so reactionary about young guys in the league right now. But like, if he doesn't, if he can't crack the lineup this year, going into next year, he's still 21, and that would be next year because he's 20 now. Like, he's still incredibly young. Like he
Yeah.
can still develop for 2 more years and end up being a great player. Some guys are just late bloomers like that. but like there's a reason people were looking at him to be drafted first overall, and obviously he went fourth to the Kraken, but he definitely has that talent, and
Yeah.
if they can put the right piece around him and coach him the right way, I think he could still easily be an elite player in the league. Uh, Another really good thing for this team is they still have some cap space. It's not a ton, but I mean 6.37 million in cap space. You can do a
Mhm.
decent amount with, north of 6 million in cap.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can
there's definitely
make some good
something
moves there.
that they can definitely put together. And I again, they're kind of team like I'm kind of looking I'm like I don't think they're fully done. Like I kind of see whether it's a major move or a minor move, like I kind of see them making maybe one more move to kind of, fill out kind of that again, just kind of that depth, that little like kind of for their third, fourth line, maybe their bottom pair defensemen, just making a move to kind of make them more whole and kind of get rid of any weaknesses that, you know, other teams could expose on them.
Yeah, and we can go and talk about those lineup combinations here.
Oh,
Um,
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see what we
uh,
got here for him.
Before we do that, I'm just going to throw in their
Talk
draft
to me.
pick. Their draft pick summary is they have all of their picks, and they don't have any of anybody else's, except they have an extra fourth for the next 2 years. That's literally it. Every other team I've looked at has had at least a bit more missing or added.
Yeah,
There's
Seattle doesn't hasn't really moved any picks or anything. They've added, but whenever they add, it's always like the year of the draft. So they
yeah,
add a pick at like the deadline, but then it's already used up by the off season.
yeah, and that's a good way to kind of retool and get going now, rather than picking up a bunch in 3 years and waiting for it.
Exactly.
But yeah, going to the lineup combinations. These are all projected by Daily Faceoff. Uh, their projected first line is Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, and Jordan Eberle. I mean, that's you know they're not going to be putting together seasons where people are going to be like, wow, this is the best line in hockey. But like, those are three very solid scoring guys who can also play good defensively.
Yeah.
Like, I think,
It's solid. I'm not going to say it's, a lead or anything. It's very solid.
yeah,
That's where
yeah,
I would put it.
yeah, absolutely. Like, these guys are all great. It's not quite first line caliber, but also a lot of first lines have that one guy that's like, are you really a part of the top three? So,
Yeah.
like a lot of them have that, you know, obviously it doesn't work as well this year, but if it was, Draisaitl, McDavid, and like Zach Hyman or someone, it's like one of
Yeah.
these things is not like the other, or whoever Matthews and Marner are ever playing with.
Yeah.
Um, but on the second line, we got Jaden Schwartz, Chandler Stevenson, and Andre Burakovsky. Uh, that's a pretty nice second line.
Yeah. That's actually a very solid second line.
That's a very
Can't
solid
really
second.
say, can't say much bad about that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the top 10 for like best second lines in the league, but like I think it's a little under. I could see this being like, a 12 to 14 range, kind of like I think it's better than the average.
I would agree with that. Yeah. That's kind
Um,
of, yeah, it's a fair spot to kind of put them in.
yeah. Uh, However, I think this is one of the best third lines in hockey right now. Eli Tolvanen, Yanni Gord, and Oliver Bjorkstrand. That's
Yeah, that's a fucking good third line.
Depth is not an issue in their
That's
top
a
nine.
really good third line.
Like, there's a
Yeah, I
lot of
can't say a
teams
bad
where
thing about that.
any of those guys would be slotting into parts on that second line. So that's
Mhm.
that's really solid. And then on that fourth line, we have two young guys that we've already talked about in Ty Cartier and Shane Wright. And then we got Brandon Tanev on the right side. Uh, I mean, it really depends on how Shane Wright plays there, but Cartier's been a really nice addition. I don't know if they expected him to be what he's been so far, but
I don't think so.
But he's been looking real nice. Tanev's a
So
good guy, and
who would
if
bump down
Wright
to
can
the
put
fourth?
together,
Who would bump down to the fourth line? Because I'm assuming Wright doesn't. They're not gonna be like, hey, you're being fourth line center. Like I'm curious to see who gets bumped down to that fourth line center role, so Shane Wright can move up and probably play in the potentially the top six, maybe on like the second line or maybe even just third line center.
I wonder if it. I'm not sure if any of these other guys also play center, but I definitely think that, like, I think Chandler Stevenson's played time on the wing before, and I think Yanni Gord's definitely also played time on the wing. So if they really want to move him up and keep him as a center, I think either of those guys could shift to the wing.
No, but I'm asking you who
And then
goes down to
a winger could
fourth
get
line
brought
though.
down. Because I just don't see Stevenson or Gord being a fourth liner, unless it just doesn't work otherwise.
Well, Stevenson, like
I'm
100% not, because you're not giving him that big deal to make him a fourth line center. Like,
yeah, and
that's just not happening.
It would definitely be Gord if it was a center, because obviously Beniers and Stevenson, that's not happening. But I think you would sooner move Gord to the wing and keep him on the third line, and then move down. What? Tolvanen had some pretty solid numbers last year.
I was say, hey, you can't put Tolvanen and that's something Seattle's gonna have to figure out though during the preseason and training camp is how do you
41 points last year for Eli Tolvanen.
How do you do these lines or and whatnot? Because again, I just don't see a world in which Shane Wright is on the fourth line, and if he starts on the fourth line, he's gonna work with the lineup, and you're gonna have to make that decision of who gets bumped down. So
yeah,
they're gonna have to cross that bridge eventually.
Yeah, I'm looking at their stats trying to figure that out. Bjorkstrand on their third line, at least projected to be on their third line, he had the second most points on the team last year and was only in second by 3 points. He was 59 points.
He was actually really good last year.
Yeah, and like Tolvanen was fifth on the team in scoring. That right wing side, man, their right wing has so much scoring. Yeah, I think Jaden. Honestly, I think Tolvanen should be up on that second line. I think Schwartz should be on the third. And is it crazy?
I know you're not going to agree, but I think Yanni Gord's the guy.
I think it might have to be Gord. I think
he's the guy. If Shane Wright gets moved out, like Gord's the only guy that he it makes the most sense. But Yanni Gord's also a guy you can rotate him up if need be. If you need to sit a guy for a shift and penalty kill, and he's still got to log quite a bit of ice time. So but again, just when you're looking at it raw, it's he makes the most sense to be the guy to go to the fourth line if you're moving Shane Wright up from
in
the
their
fourth
situation.
Line.
Yeah. I was gonna say Burakovsky because he only had 16 points last year, but that was in 49 games. So he's obviously scoring at a higher rate than that would show. Yeah,
I think your second line. I think you roll with a Chandler Stevenson, a Schwartz, and a Bjorkstrand, and then you let Shane Wright run it out on the third line with Tolvanen and Burakovsky.
I would probably do that, except swapping Schwartz and Tolvanen. I think Tolvanen's ready to.
No, but I'm more so going off the fact of it's whatever way you split it, because I think Schwartz and Bjorkstrand will work good together, and Burakovsky and Tolvanen. It's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. So it's I guess if you're swapping Tolvanen up to the second line, then you just keep Burakovsky there, and you just keep Bjorkstrand on the third. Which again, whatever way you slice it, I think you're going to be just fine. But I think those are kind of the winger combinations that will bring the most out of players at least.
Yeah, that's fair. And then for moving on to the defense, we got the first defensive pair, Vince Dunn and Adam Larsson. Solid.
I like that.
Vince Dunn's really good. Larsson is a great complementary first pair defense. I feel like very few teams nowadays are doing the that top defensive pair that's stacked. I'm trying to think of an example. Almost like that Pronger and Niedermeyer kind of. I think they play together. You don't stack your two best ones up front. You kind of have them on pairs 1 and 2, and then you kind of have two nightmare situations for the other team. And I think this works perfectly as kind of that stabilizing defenseman and then that all-star defenseman.
I
Jamie
completely agree. I love it. I love the way that.
Yeah.
Assuming this is the way they go, because again, you cannot put Dunn and Montour together. Like,
yeah,
you can't. Like, that's like putting fire and ice together and being like, all right, let's make some magic happen here. No,
and they don't need to.
It's not gonna work.
Dunn's played well with Larson in the past. Like,
exactly.
They don't
like,
need to.
They
rock
don't
that
need
boat.
to overthink it. They need to just, because I'm assuming the second pair is Alexiak and Montour, which
yes,
yeah, like, and that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense doing it that way.
And then the third defensive pairing is Riker Evans and Will Borgen.
Oh, Evans with Borgen. Okay. I like Borgen actually. He's one of those guys. Every time I watch Seattle games, I have a lot of fun watching him. I don't really know much about Riker Evans, so I'm wondering if maybe like a Stanley Cup champion, Josh Mahura, does he maybe make the team and take that spot? I don't know.
They have some really nice guys there on that third defensive pair, considering it's a third defensive pair. Like last year, Borgen played all 82 games, and he ended the season with 25 points, 17 and a half minutes time on ice per game. Evans only had 9 points, but that was in 36 games. He's 22 years old, so you got to assume he's going to improve. Average ice time, 19 minutes per game for Riker Evans. Like,
over how many games? Sorry?
36. So
okay.
Well, if you double that, a little bit more as a full
pick,
season. So
like
about a 25-point pace over a full season from your third defensive pairing. Like, he can play a decent amount of minutes, so maybe I don't know if he's a penalty killer, but it kind of looks that way looking at the lineup.
The more I look at it, I think Riker Evans actually probably is the guy who's going to be there, and I think Mahura is probably just the seventh guy who comes in if need be.
Yeah, and you know what? Injuries always happen. It's great to have a backup.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah,
you definitely need that.
Speaking of backup, for goaltending, they have Philip Grubauer as their starter and Joey Daccord as the backup, allegedly. I think we all know that's not true. It's definitely Joey Daccord's net to lose at this point. But they still got Grubauer, who can be a good backup. He had a couple games that he flat out stole last year. But he's one of those goalies where consistency is just the enemy. He just can't be consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing that's kind of the biggest thing for me with Seattle is like their goaltending. Like, do they try and force it with Grubauer because like he's the guy on the big deal, or do you just say fuck it and you just go with Daccord because he's the guy that maybe gives you the better chance of winning games and plays better on a consistent basis? Like that's a discussion that they're gonna have to have at some point with who they want to be their guy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look up their not their cap friendly, whatever we got here, Puckpedia, for the Kraken. They got so Grubauer is on a contract for the next 3 years still at 5.9 mil. I had a suggestion, but I don't think there's any way the other team takes it. I was gonna say that they should try and trade Grubauer for Dan Vladar to Calgary to just get a bit more of a solid backup. See if he could be a bit more solid, a change of scenery, but there's no way Calgary takes it with that. I didn't know Grubauer was making that much, to be honest.
Calgary would, but like again, Seattle would have to attach. Because again, like is Grubauer that much better than Dan Vladar? I don't know. And when you look at the contract, like if you're Seattle, like
think so.
Calgary maybe takes that deal if you attach, a second in something, or maybe you just have to straight up just be like, Grubauer and a first for Vladar. But then that makes no sense for Seattle to do that. You'd rather just eat Grubauer's salary than giving up a first round pick when, again, you're not a legit contender and you could use, you can use that first round pick, whether it's, again, like if they want to make a move for a guy like Patrick Laine, maybe, and you want a first line goal scorer to put with Beniers, or you just want to use that pick and just, again, continue to build up your prospect pool. So when you become a contender, you're in that situation that Dallas is in, where it's like, fuck, Joe Pavelski retired, but it's like, okay, Logan Stankoven can slot right in there.
Yeah.
And then they've still got so many other good prospects coming up. Like, if you can put yourself in a position like what Dallas is in, you got to go that route because, like, again, Dallas looks in, despite losing one of their best forwards, Dallas is still completely fine. I don't view that as a knock on them because it's a quick replace for them and they're fine. So, yeah, just long story short, Grubauer, no. I just don't see anything that they could get rid of him unless he has a great season. So. And then, you can maybe get rid of him or retain a bit, but
I was going to say,
you just have to ride it out.
It would have to be an Erik Karlsson situation where he has a really good year, and at the deadline, you say, somebody have him.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think you'd get near as much back as San Jose did. But, just getting out from Grubauer's contract would be enough. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at their puck PD here. I scrolled down a bit. It looks like Matty Beniers does not have a contract. It looks like he's an RFA.
Is he an RFA right now?
He's an RFA right now.
What? I thought it was a...
Am I reading this wrong?
Hold on.
Or does Puckpedia not show the current year and it's just shown to the next year? There's no way, right?
Oh, that's why. So the year after his draft year, he went back to Michigan, and then their season ended, so he signed with the Kraken. He played 10 games. So he played one game more to burn that first year of his contract. So that's why. Because I was like, he's only been in the league 2 full years. He burned the first year of his contract there, playing that 10 games. So that's why.
Nice.
So
you know what? Most teams don't want to do that because they want the lower cap hit for longer while they're competing. I think that's a great call by Seattle.
I kind of think so too. The thing is if you're a contending team, you want to not burn that year and have another year of them having them on their cheap ELC. Yeah. But if you're a team in a rebuild, you want to burn it faster so then you can try and lock them up long term on a way cheaper deal. I know it sounds like the plan was with San Jose with Will Smith. It was to try and grab him, when he's done school and whatnot, sign him, get him to play some games and burn that first year. But then obviously, Boston College went on that insane run in the playoffs. And then by the time their season ended, the NHL season was basically ending. So for a rebuilding team, that's actually, I didn't know that. I like that for Seattle. I actually really like that for the fact of
it's good for the players too.
Burn that first year and
you're more soon going to get that NHL
but that's a thing.
Payday. Obviously, they might, they might
lose a couple mil doing that.
They might, but at the same time, I think you also just kind of, I think it's more worth that to just get onto that, especially if they want to sign you long term and that, to just get that. And now you have, even if it's not as much as you could have, you now have I can retire on this money. Right? That is true. Any practice, any game, something could outside of hockey itself, something could happen and you could never play again. It could be a freak ankle injury or something. We've seen guys with very slight wrist injuries who just are never the same again. And if that were to happen in between those years that didn't burn and you don't end up getting that contract, that'd be heartbreaking.
Yeah. So does that wrap up everything you kind of got for Seattle?
Yeah, mostly.
All
It'll
right,
be
so then
interesting to see.
rapid quick fire then. Oh, okay. So
Uh,
say your piece.
yeah, I just so they have that 6.37 mil in projected cap space for next year. So
I don't see
that's
anywhere you need to put it though.
well,
Like when we
Matty
kind of look through their
Beniers.
team, it's like, well, I guess, yeah. I guess
So
Matty
I got to
Beniers.
imagine the majority, if not all of that's going to Beniers. So I'm trying to think, 6.7 or 6.3. Is that's not enough for a long-term deal for Beniers, is it?
So that
That's
and that was going to
are
be
they
my
bridge
rapid
are they
fire
doing a
questions.
bridge deal?
That's going to
Okay.
be the thing. So my rapid fire question. So the first question was, do you think Beniers gets a long term deal or do you think he gets a bridge deal? Because I'm kind of thinking he gets a bridge deal.
I there's definitely a place for them. I do not like bridge deals. I think you
No,
fuck
I'm not a
around.
fan of them either. Look at
I think
Calgary.
way more often you fuck around and then you find out. Very few teams get a good deal from it. So,
Yeah.
and we were just looking at the lineups. Dude is playing on the fourth line. He's not getting a ton of minutes. You could retain half his salary and ship him out. Not even. Just attach a second to him and take the full cap hit off and then pay him. Send Brandon Tanev out of town. He's not cracking that top nine. That top nine is solid
You
even
don't need him
without
in your
Shane
top
Wright.
nine. He's a
Exactly.
great leader. He's a great fourth line guy. Like,
Exactly. But 3.5 mil for only this next year. 3.5 mil is too much for a fourth liner when you're trying to make room to extend who you're hoping to be is your franchise center. So
I think at that point, though, I think you just say, hey, tough tug Burakovsky, smell you later. And I think that's the guy you maybe move then. Because he's making
he
more
could
and like.
oh, but he's not making a ton more and he gives way more value to the team on
Does
ice at
he?
least.
Depends what way you're looking at it. Are you looking at it from the offensive standpoint or the defensive? Like offensively, Seattle is just fucking fine without him. But having a
A
great penalty
40 point
killer, a
scorer.
leader, and Tanev can drop 30 to 40 points on the third line. And he can play on your top penalty kill.
I
And
guess, but I don't
he's
think
a
he's
great leader in the locker room. Like I
I
think
don't think Tanev can get to the third line. I don't think he has a chance really.
well, if you
Unless you
move out
move out
Burakovsky,
Burakovsky, but
yeah, if you move out Burakovsky, you fucking
if they move
move
out
Tanev up there.
Burakovsky, Bjorkstrand moves up, Gord goes over to the right wing, and Shane
Oh,
Wright moves up.
fuck Gord.
I don't think
Sniff
Tanev goes up.
Gord, sit there and sniff the fourth line. You'd have the best fourth line center in the league, and it wouldn't even be close.
I don't know.
You might have like the
Tanev's only got
strongest
one more
center core
year.
from top to bottom.
Tanev
He-
is
cheap contract extension. He's not going to
he's
get paid
4
more
years
equal to
older
what he's
than
getting.
Burakovsky. Burakovsky had the same. They had the same amount of goals and assists, and obviously because of that points last season. Tanev played 66 games. Burakovsky only played 49.
But you got to move
Burakovsky's got
Burakovsky anyways. He's going to have to
why?
get moved anyways.
Why?
Because you move Shane Wright up, and then you've got so many good young forward prospects come up. Not even mentioning Berkeley Catton. Like you're going to have to
True.
start moving guys out, so you're better off just. Again, I like Burakovsky, but just cut ties with him. You move Tanev up, and then when these young guys start to come up, you get Tanev on a cheaper deal, and then you move him back to the fourth line. And he's still a great penalty killer and locker room guy.
Maybe.
I think because I'm just more looking at it long term for Seattle. Like if it was like Seattle's contending for a cup and they're trying to win within the next 2 years, okay, maybe different. But they got to play the long term approach. Like they're not.
But
They're not sniffing the Western.
You're taking the older guy. You think when Tanev's 35, he's going to be giving good value? He's on the fourth line now.
Maybe you don't have him then, but you're definitely not gonna have Burakovsky then. Either way, they're probably both gone by the time they want to contend. But it's like rip the band-aid off and get more value for the guy that you can get more value for now. And keep the guy who you can get a little bit cheaper and can provide a little bit more long-term value actually being on the team.
Yeah. Or you know what? Honestly, you know what? Again, could be Gord.
Again, I view Gord kind of in the
I
same realm as a Tanev. Like, that's just a heart and soul guy from day one for that team.
yeah.
It's like one of those guys you want to try and hold on to and squeeze as much out of their career for your team as you can possibly get. And then when there's nothing left to get out of that lemon, then you're like, all right, time to move on and get someone new. Very similar to
Yeah.
the Islanders. We're going into an Islanders year where probably no Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin, but they've got that Kyle McLean guy who's kind of coming in as a fourth line crash and bash guy that he's the new guy they're bringing in to fill that void of those guys. But again, it's just younger and faster and can still do the same thing.
Yeah. I do wonder if Tanev, Gord, or both get moved sometime this season. They both only have 1 year left on their contract, and they both have higher than you would expect cap hits. They're both 32.
They're both higher up.
So just to make room and also like especially half retained on either of them. Yanni Gord at just under 2.6 mil or Tanev at 1.75 mil. That could be, a lot of playoff teams would give you a decent haul for that.
Well, and that leads into my next question, because depending on Seattle's position, I think depends what they do with him. If they're outside the play, like if they know they're not going to make it, then yeah, you retain half and move them. But if it looks like you're going to be a playoff team, maybe you ride out with them, and then you probably can get both of them on maybe a bit of a cheaper deal. So, does Seattle make the playoffs next year? Just initial reaction. Right now, where they're at, do you think Seattle is a playoff team?
Do I think Seattle is a playoff team? I don't think it's very likely, but I want to say yes.
And I don't think that's unrealistic. I'm more leaning on the side of no. I think
no
they're one of those teams.
year.
I think they just miss out on the wild card spot. But again, with that Pacific, fuck, you never know. Like, I think the top two are locked up, but
the teams,
like that third spot, I think is wide open in the Pacific. Like, even if you don't get a wild card spot, I think there's a chance the second wild card spot could be higher or equal to third in the Pacific. So I'm saying no, but because they're in the Pacific, I think they have a much better chance as opposed to if they were in the Central.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think there's too many teams right now that are good in the West overall. I think there's a good chance both wild cards go to the Central.
That's where I'm at.
But yeah,
that's where I'm at right now.
I think they'll be in the race. I think until game like 78, I think they'll still be in the race. Like it'll maybe not that.
They'll be in the
like
hunt.
75. They'll be right in there before it kind of falls off. But
yeah,
they got a good young team. They got cap space. They got some young guys that I really didn't know about. That the Riker Evans and such of the world that are looking pretty solid. So I think underratedly, I think this team is looking to move up a bit.
And then leads into the last question, the one we're going to continue to do with every team. One player who's most likely to win an award, a single individual player award. Who do you got? I think I know what you're going with. Oh, come on. I know exactly what you're thinking. Just say it.
I was really trying to think of who would be the funniest person to say if they're going to win the Masterton.
Sakes.
But no, I'll this is important to it. Is Shane Wright
fuck off.
Is he eligible for the Calder?
Fuck you. That was going to be mine. I was going to be like, oh, fucking hot take alert, because I thought you were just going to get Vince Dunn's nuts tattooed on your chin.
Oh, I thought you were ready for me to say Decord for Vezina.
No, I was totally on you doing.
Okay.
Yeah, Shane Wright, because he played 8 and 8, so he hasn't even burned a year off his ELC.
Oh, 8.
He's going into technically his first year, so he is a full on rookie. He can still win it next year.
Okay. I thought eight games burned a year. That's interesting.
No, it's once you hit that 9. So Seattle
I
played that very smart with Shane Wright. They decided to go the route of play 8 this year, play 8 this year, but we still got you for another 3 years on your ELC.
yeah. I think I go Shane Wright on the Calder. I think
That's mine. He's the dark
Yeah.
horse to win it this year.
yeah. I think Vince Dunn could win a Norris, but I think it's less likely. I think he could be that guy at some point. I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he could knock on the door and get a couple of votes, but he'd have to have obviously a career year. But yeah, I think it's more likely that Shane Wright puts together a real nice year, especially last year. Those 8 games, 4 goals, pretty nice. They get him moved up a little bit into the lineup. He averaged 13 and a half minutes of time on ice this past year. All 4.
That's my pick. Is like I think Shane Wright is more likely to win the Calder than Vince Dunn is to win the Norris next year. And like when there's multiple things you look at, but it's like Shane Wright's not in any of the conversations, so like he is the clear dark horse. Yeah. And I think he's also the guy that's kind of in potentially the best position, like maybe a Logan Stankoven. But I think when you look at the talent that Shane Wright can get put around him, I think he's got a great chance.
Yeah.
Because the skill is there. He's just got to get the confidence going and get the juices flowing. And then he could be the reason that Seattle maybe makes the playoffs. Like if Shane Wright comes in and drops, like what did he do last year? He had
the 4 goals and 5 points in 8 games.
So,
all 4 were even strength goals as well. I don't know if he got any power play time. Probably not, but all of them were even strength. So
and that's a 50-point pace. So like if you've got Shane Wright potentially dropping it after full offseason and everything, dropping 60 to 65, that could be the needle mover that gets Seattle into the playoffs right there.
Yeah, just adding. I mean, that would 60 to 65. Their top scorer last year had 62 points in Jared McCann.
Yeah,
that just adding another guy to your team that's on par with your top scorer, that completely changes how your season will go. So I like that pick. I was going to go with Vince Dunn until I was looking at all the players and I saw Shane Wright and I couldn't remember if 8 took a year of his ELC or not.
Yeah, no, he is still fully on his ELC here.
Underratedly, Beniers, I think he has the potential to be a selfie guy at some point. I don't think as soon as next year, but I think at some point.
There's definitely a chance with him. But does that wrap up everything with Seattle Kraken?
That's everything.
Awesome.
Berkeley Catton, I don't think he probably doesn't play for him this year. I think maybe they try him out for a few games. They don't burn a year. I think they just see what's up.
Yeah, and they let him go back and develop for another year, I think.
Yeah. All right.
So moving on to the Minnesota Wild, who we kind of touched on a bit last episode with the Brock Faber extension. If you hadn't listened to last episode, I'm not going to tell you how we feel about it. Go listen to it. But you probably know how we feel about it. Other than that, for the Minnesota Wild, been a kind of a quiet offseason for them. They made that move at the draft to get it to move up and get Zeev Boyum, which I think was a fantastic pick for them, and I think he's going to be a great part of their long-term success. You re-up Jake Middleton, 4 years, 4.35 AAV, great, just physical defensive defenseman, and then they signed Yakov Trenin in free agency, 4 years, 3.5 AAV. Again, that's kind of a third line depth piece, good penalty killer. It's nothing to bolster the top 6. They're riding with their guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't like that deal, the Trennan deal. I don't
just
mind
because
it.
of the AAV and the term. Like it's just a lot for a guy that like again he's not a big impact guy for your team, like to give out a deal like that.
It's not.
Like, it's not like it's an egregious
number.
But it's with the term. I'm more so looking at.
I almost think it gets
4
better
years
with the term. because I think for that time, I think the cap's gonna keep going up. That number is gonna be less and less a percent of
I
your
mean,
cap, and it's
I
already
guess.
a low
Yeah.
amount. Like he's not
Yeah.
gonna be old by the time it ends. He's gonna be 31, so he's not gonna unless he just naturally regresses. He's not gonna be falling off due to age because of it.
Yeah.
Like, if he was a one-dimensional offensive third line guy, I wouldn't like it as much. But the fact that he also is pretty good defensively and can play on one of your penalty kill units, I think it's fair enough. I don't think they got a deal with it, but I think it's fine.
Yeah, I guess when you look at with the cap going up, maybe, yeah. The thing is with Minnesota right now is like, I think they're actually in a very good spot right now for their team as of right now. And again, when we talk about, you look at the Faber deal, and then you've got Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson Ek. Like you've kind of got those guys locked up.
For a
And
while.
so you're
That's good. For a while too. Like
yeah.
they've got them locked in. Like that's actually real nice work that they've done to get some of those really important pieces locked up to like Boldy 2030, Eriksson Ek 2029. Where's Brock Faber 2033? Like
Yeah.
that's good.
And then you've got, you've got young guys like Liam Ogren, Marit Kuznetsov, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce that one.
Oh,
it's a sick name. Marco Rossi, like you've got good young guys coming up, and I see people being like, "Oh, the biggest thing with Minnesota is Kirill Kaprizov. He's making $9 million for the next 2 years. They're gonna have to pay him. You don't have to fucking worry about that. All right, you ride him out this year with his $9 million. He's eligible for an extension July 1st of next year. And you know what's freed up July 1st of next year?
Hello, Brundi.
$13 million of cap space.
That's a lot of money.
You got $13 million coming off the books from the Ryan Suter, Zach Parise buyouts. Right there. That goes to Kaprizov. And so you tack on, like, I mean, he probably fucking gets 12 and a half. Realistically.
Yeah, they're getting more money back just for just out of thin air. Just like it's coming into the team, you're not giving up or taking anything in. You're just getting that. That money is more than McDavid makes on his contract. Yeah. Like it's a lot of money. So
even it's a lot of fucking money they've had.
If Kaprizov says I want 14 mil a year, you're still coming out with extra cap space. Like that doesn't make that as good of a contract, but like the position they'll be in next year compared to this year is real nice. So
not only that, you got $2.5 million guaranteed off the books next year when Fleury retires. Because it's pretty much like kind of shown that like he one more year for him, and then that's it. He's riding off into the sunset. So you've got so much money coming off the books that you can give. Like Kaprizov re-signing is not a problem, and then you've got your core locked in, and a lot of them on really good deals. So now you like next year Minnesota can go out in free agency, honestly, and spend, and they can go out and grab, they could potentially pull a Minnesota or not a Seattle. Maybe not in the level, but like you could go out and just be like, yeah, we're going to grab like a Brandon Montour and then a strong second line player type thing, and just bolster your team that much more. Because again, your goaltending is still good with Gustafsson, and you've got arguably the best goaltending prospect in Jesper Wallstedt coming up. So,
and Philip Gustafsson's been very good as well. So like, whenever you decide to commit to him long term, or if you want to move him and make room for Wallstedt, if Wallstedt's taking huge strides, they'll get something real nice back for Gustafsson then. So
like you're Minnesota right now, and you've got, because like I think Kaprizov is going to stay there. I think he loves it there. I think he wants to keep building what they've got there. So
there's a lot of promise there for sure. Looking at their team.
Yeah, so if you've got Kaprizov locked in long term, and you've got the rest of your core on great deals, and you've still got your, assuming as long as he pans out, your your number two, your top pairing left-handed defenseman coming up, along with these other great forward prospects, you're in a really good position. You don't need to rush shit right now. You roll with just where you're at. And then next offseason, that's when it's like, all right, now let's see what Minnesota can do here. Because now you can lock up Kaprizov. You can go out and add a couple big free agents. You're hopefully going to get Zeev Boyum, who's going to sign, and he's going to be ready to make that jump to the NHL. Like this year Minnesota is going to be decent. They're not going to be great. They're not going to be bad. They might even sneak into a playoff spot in that Central Division. Like, it's very possible.
Yeah, that was
Especially
we both had that same
Colorado
hot take
slips out.
prediction.
If Colorado slips
prediction.
out, but regardless of this year, it's next offseason where it's like, as a Minnesota fan, you need to be excited. Because and it's a long way, but it's going to be so worth it, because that's when this team is really going to start to form into they could genuinely jump from fifth or sixth in this division. They could be number one the following year if they do their offseason right, with the money that they're going to have available and the prospects and whatnot.
Yeah, like they could.
I like the direction they're in.
Yeah, they got a real nice direction, and people have known that for the last year at least, probably closer to 2. People have been saying, for these next few years, they're just going to have to deal with it, because it's really hard to compete when you have 16.8% of the cap tied up in buyouts, guys who are literally not playing for you. So as soon as that's done and you don't have to worry about it, now you can go for it. And they've done a real good job of keeping things together and extending guys and making sure they will be ready in that future. And yeah, like the next offseason will just be so massive for them, like on the same day that they go out and they're potentially signing big free agents from next year, they could be announcing a Kaprizov extension. Like they could be
Zeev Boyum contract signing. Like
they could extend Philip Gustafson at that point. Like that'll be when a lot of their stuff happens.
Minnesota could, and never thought it'd be possible, but they could have a bigger, more newsworthy, headliner day next year than when they did way back when they signed Parise and Suter in the same day. Like day one of free agency, you could lock up Gustafson, do a great deal, Kaprizov, do a great deal, and you could add a couple big name free agents all in one day. And like all of a sudden, the entire narrative around the Minnesota Wild would shift. Because I like the Wild and I want to see them succeed. I'm tired of seeing them be,
dude, it's hard to hate
in that Coyote spot where you're not getting a top 5 pick, but you're not making the playoffs. Like you're right in between, so you're not getting those top prospects, and you're not making the playoffs. It's like you need to eventually either just go all in, or you just got to tear it down and rebuild. And they've kind of stuck in the middle. But it's like things are slowly starting to turn around for them, and next offseason is when it's gonna.
Yeah,
it's when they're gonna take off, I think.
Yeah, and I think a massive reason that they've started coming back around is they've had really good scouting.
They've had very good scouting.
A lot of these young guys that they picked have been some of the best ones in their draft pick range in the draft. They traded up for Bouyum, which everyone loves. They even guys like, because Matt Boldy was a trade, right? They got him from LA.
No, they drafted Boldy. It was Brock Faber.
Boldy. Faber's the one they got. Yeah, so they saw the potential in him, and they gave up Kevin Fiala. So they even made moves by scouting guys already in the NHL to be like, hey, we need to make sure that we can properly get a rebuild going. And like, I think a lot of the smartest teams do that. I think a lot of the smartest teams go out there and, all these teams are trying to figure out who should we draft? Who's the next best guy to draft? I think a lot of the best teams wait for them to be drafted, wait a few more years, and then they'll trade for them before they've still broken out. But now there's like a long history of them clearly having that talent. And yeah, I think Brock Faber especially is a massive showing of that. I don't know what a Kaprizov deal looks like. I think it's probably around 12 and a half. It kind of depends. I guess a lot of it depends on what a guy like Draisaitl signs for. You know, I don't think he quite gets Draisaitl money, but at the same time, it really depends. You know, I see Draisaitl landing anywhere between, 12 million and could go up to 14. If he really wants, he could hold him hostage and go higher than 14.
When you talk about
difficult,
you talk about Faber, and the big thing with Faber is when that deal happened, a lot of people immediately were like, "Oh, okay, I think that the LA Kings won this deal because like they're getting Kevin Fiala." But it's like when you're looking at it, it's like, we didn't know Brock Faber is going to turn into this, but Minnesota obviously did their homework and their scouting on this kid. He's from Minnesota, and so it's like, okay, this is a guy who's going to want to just lock in long term here. Like he's going to be more like he grew up a Minnesota Wild fan. He was, all the way through until his draft eligible year, he was attending Minnesota Wild games, like front row up against the glass, like just having a blast cheering for his favorite team. So that's a guy you obviously want. And then you get a first round pick, which you turn into Liam Ogren. Like, and especially with the way Brock Faber's developed, like this trade looks so fucking good for Minnesota. Not to say Kevin Fiala is a bad player at all. Like, I think Fiala's been great for LA. But like, already Brock Faber for Kevin Fiala, I think Minnesota's won that deal as long as Faber continues to just keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But then you've also added that first round pick, which became Liam Ogren in there. It's like, fuck, Minnesota smashed that trade. And again, and that's a big part for them is now having that, top, number one defenseman. And now you go out in the draft and you get that complimentary piece to go right with him when your forwards is really good and you still got great forward prospects coming up. So you can kind of fuck around and be like, yeah, Kaprizov, we'll give you a 7-8 year deal at 12 mil and you can get away with that. You'll be just fine doing that because Kaprizov is worth it. And especially when how much money you're saving on all these other contracts they got now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like every cent you save on one guy, on each individual guy, goes to another guy that you can overpay. Like
because Joel Eriksson X on a fucking cheap contract.
Yeah,
compared to what he should be getting paid.
And
like same with he could be a 7.5 guy.
Yeah.
And they're paying him what? 5.25. 5.25. Like, so they're paying him, in my opinion, $2 million at least under what he's worth.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. And like even a lot of their depth guys, Freddie Gaudreau's not breaking the bank on any teams, but 2.1 mil for the next 5 or 4 seasons till 2028. Like that's
fuck. I didn't know he was signed in. I didn't know he was locked in that long.
Yeah,
but that's not even a terrible deal though for a good depth guy that can produce. But that's not even a bad deal.
Exactly. I'm saying it's a good deal. Like I like it. So
he's underpaid.
I think Freddie Gaudreau is an underrated player in the league. I think not many people know his name, but especially in the last few years, he's put up some pretty respectable numbers.
Yeah. But with the Minnesota Wild, do we want to jump into their forward lines? What it's looking like for next year?
Yeah, we definitely can. I wanted to bring up the stats here to see if I'm talking out my ass. Freddie Gaudreau, 67 games played last year, 15 points. So like he's not.
What about the year before?
The year before, though.
Look at the year before.
Oh no, do I have the year before? What if I click on Freddie Gaudreau? Will it show his last year, 2-year stats? I made the mistake of going to ESPN, so now it's just not going to load.
You're cooked. So, what did you have last year?
15 points in 67 games.
So the year before that, he had 38 points in 82 games, 19 and 19. The year before that, 44 points in 76, 14 goals, 30 assists. So ever since his career high in points with Pittsburgh was 10 points in 19 games. Before that, he had 4 points in 55 with Nashville. Minnesota gave him a chance and put him with the right guys, and he's made it work. Last year was a bit of a down year, but I think also for
he had
every
surgery
player on the
last
Wild.
offseason. It would look
Yeah,
like.
and every player for the Wild, they had a bit of a down year. Like the whole team as a whole had a bit of a down year. Like they went from being in the playoffs to the last 2 years last 2 years to missing the playoffs. So naturally, you're going to expect guys to kind of, have a bit of a down year. Like that just happens, right? But looking at their lines for next year, this is just off daily face-off what their projections are. Again, nothing's confirmed because lots of things can happen here. But right now, it's looking like their first line is going to be Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello, centered by Marco Rossi.
Wow, they got that projected. Interesting.
Now, but when you hear the second line, you're like, holy fuck, that's actually a pretty good 1-2 punch with their first and second line.
Well, definitely.
I don't mind that first line, though. I like that.
Yeah, that first line had one guy on it that I thought was going to be there. So, yeah, I mean, their second line's definitely going to be pretty stacked. Let's hear it.
Yeah, the second line is Marcus Johansson and Matt Boldy, centered by Joel Eriksson Ek.
Dude, Matt Boldy and Eriksson Ek on a second line is real nice.
I
didn't realize good. Matt Boldy and Kaprizov were both left wingers. I kind of thought Boldy played on the right side so that he would, was up on that first with Kaprizov.
It's got Boldy listed as a right winger on here. It's got him on the right side. It's got Johansson on the left wing.
Interesting. So, I'm on Puckpedia and it just shows him as a left winger.
Oh, okay.
If he's available to play the right side, he should probably be playing up with Kaprizov at this point, but Zuccarello's been timeless.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's kind of to space it out and have a good 1-2 punch because like that chemistry is there with Zuccarello and Kaprizov.
Yeah.
And so it's like if you've got Zuccarello for, only a couple more years, you just take advantage of it while you can. And then maybe let Boldy and Eriksson Ek build that confidence up in that chemistry. And then maybe you could try just doing a Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy. And then maybe that could take, because Kaprizov can work with anyone, right? Like he's in that level of superstar where you can basically put whoever with him and it's going to work.
Yeah.
So just take the time now to develop the chemistry between the other two. So then when you throw him with Kaprizov, you've got the magic right there. There's no adjustments or growing pains. You can just run with it straight off the bat. Third line. This is actually a fun third line. Marcus Foligno and Ryan Hartman, centered by Merit Kunitsov. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's a fun third line.
Yeah.
Young,
it's a good energy line.
Young forward prospect, one of your better forward prospects, centered by, like you're centering Marcus Foligno and Ryan Hartman. You're going to feel so fucking safe out there.
Yeah, like that's one of those lines that's so good. Like, anytime the other team scores, you can throw that line out there and just kind of like try and reset where the team's at and just try and stop the bleeding a bit. And I think that's one of those really good lines for that.
Well, and if those guys are having an off night, your fourth line can do exactly that as well, maybe even better. Jacob Lauko and Yakov Trenin, centered by Freddie Gaudreau.
Yeah, like Freddie Gaudreau, Yakov Trenin, especially on a fourth line, is a nice luxury to have.
Yeah, and that's not even including a guy like Liam Ogren, who I think is projected to probably take a step into the league here. So maybe you're looking at Marcus Foligno goes onto the fourth line, and an Ogren comes into your top 9, or something like that. So, like I like the makeup of Minnesota's forward core. Like it's nothing elite, but it's only something that's going to continue to just get better because a lot of it is so young for at least their top producers.
Like that's really solid. It's not incredibly dissimilar to the Kraken almost.
Yeah.
obviously
kind of on par with
the
the Kraken
Kraken
almost.
the Kraken do not have a Kirill Kaprizov
Yeah,
because he is a
that's the
legitimate
difference.
game breaker. But
Yeah,
they got that very solid depth, pretty much all the way through the lineup.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I just brought
And
up
then
Daily Faceoff, and Jared Spurgeon has a big caution sign beside his name. What the hell does that mean?
it's just because he went down injured
Oh,
last year and was ruled out. So they're like, oh, is he going to play? But like, he's going to be healthy and ready to go come next season. So we're including him in the defensive pairings here. But
I thought it
first
was saying it was
defensive.
like dangerous for me to cross the road if I was wearing the
Oh,
jersey. It's got the big yellow
maybe
triangle with an
maybe he'll
exclamation
put
mark.
that on there and be like, fuck, you cross the neutral zone. My defensive partner, Jake Middleton, he's gonna fuck you up. I won't, but my partner will.
God,
But Minnesota's
that'd be so funny to see a guy like be telling a guy like before the face off, like, hey, don't come in on this side, and then a guy does, and the second he crosses the blue line, just gloves go flying. He just goes and immediately fights him. He doesn't even make a hockey play. He just goes and immediately grabs him.
hey, that's how you let them know that they don't come down your side.
That's captain stuff right
That
there.
shows you mean business. Exactly.
Yeah.
But Minnesota's first defensive pairing, I like it. Jonas Brodin, Brock Faber. That's solid.
Solid.
That's
Very
nothing
solid.
like elite. Like it's not a top 10 pair in the league, but it is a very solid 15 to 11.
Yeah.
Like it's in the top half of the league.
Yeah.
And then again, as long as Yves Boyne pans out, when he jumps into the league, he slots in on that top pair. It's only going to get better. Second pair, Jake Middleton and Jared Spurgeon. I'm totally fine with that. You got kind of the offensive guy with the bruiser defensive guy, the fighter. Like,
yeah, like
that's a fun pair.
That's really
and Jake
good.
Middleton's such a fucking treat to watch, man. You watch that guy, it's just like every time you watch him, it's just so fun watching him. Like, but you've got a defenseman who just plays a solid defensive physical game, but can also put up points and fight. It's like, fuck, this guy kind of just he does it all, but he leans more towards the defensive side. Like that's just such a great defenseman to have. And I'm so pumped that he, his long journey to the NHL, he got that big contract finally this offseason from the Wild. Like, I'm so happy to see him just get some stability and get paid, because again, he's a Patrick Hornquist guy. Like, people are like, I love Hornquist and his story being a last round, the very last pick of the draft. Jacob Middleton was that. And look at him now. 10 years later, he just signed his first really big fat deal in the league. Like, it took him 10 years from, almost to the day from when he was drafted to get his first big payday. So he's worked hard for it. And I mean, he's endured a lot. Like, he's had to fight a lot and crash and bash to get paid. So,
and now he's going to be, the extension kicks in next year, but he's got his 1 year left, and then 4.35 mil until 2029. So like, they've got him locked in, and he finally got his big payday. So
yeah,
that's awesome for him.
And then the last pair, on the left side, Declan Chisholm, and on the right side, none other than Zach Bogosian. Bogo with that's not a great third pair. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's a very solid.
Yeah.
I'm confident in it, but it's serviceable for where Minnesota is right now and their lack of cap space because of the buyouts. Like, that's fine.
Part of that will be solved by the what was it? Slightly more than 14 million cap space they get next year.
Yeah, like they're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, these guys can play games.
I'm not worried about
that. NHL games.
And then in the net, Philip Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury, and then they still have Jesper Wallstedt coming up, who I think it kind of looks like Wallstedt probably, one more year in the AHL, or maybe just up until the trade deadline, and maybe you send Fleury to a contender who's looking for a backup or something, and that's it. But like, goaltending is not an issue for Minnesota. whether it's Gustafsson or Wallstead for their future, that's fine. They don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, man. Looking at Wallstedt's stats, dude, even when he was really young, dude's never put up a bad numbered season. Oh, man.
Yeah, right?
Like, when he was, so how old is he? 21? So I don't even know how old he would have been in this year, but in 17-18, he had a 921. Like, 923, 944. This one's just one. He played one game in the Swedish Junior League and had a 30 save shutout. 907, 19, a 908 2 years ago in the AHL, and then a 910 last year in the AHL. Like, obviously, none of those are the NHL, but solid numbers in the AHL 2 years in a row, and even last year he played more games and the number got slightly higher. Dude, I think, one more year in the AHL at most, if they don't give him the... Well, I guess they can't really give him the... Yeah, he's in a situation where he's kind of forced to stay down there for an extra year because they got Gustafsson, who's obviously the starter, and Marc-Andre Fleury has a full no movement clause. Yeah. So he can't be sent to the minors, he can't be waived, and he cannot be traded unless he agrees to one of those. So unless he's really done and says, hey, trade me in my last year to Pittsburgh and then I can retire. Like, unless he does something like that, Wallstedt's staying down for another year, but after that, he's coming up.
Yeah. But that kind of wraps up everything for kind of looking at the Minnesota Wild. We can kind of dive into the other stuff. Like, what are your initial things? Do you think Minnesota's a playoff team, or do you think they're on the outside looking in again this year?
So conventional wisdom tells you they're not a playoff team yet, but I think they have an outside shot at it. Do I really think they're going to? No. We both had it as our hot take that they would, and I definitely think they make it. I think there's a reason.
They do.
I think there's a reason it's a hot take. I think
Minnesota makes it.
Like, I want them to, and I think there's a good chance they could, but like, I'm thinking of it. Is there a more likely or a less likely scenario? What do I think on that? I think it's more likely they don't make it.
See, but I like the makeup of their forwards. I like that they got that top superstar in Kaprizov. I think maybe a big part of it for them is some rookies that may be coming to the lineup. How can they translate and can they be big impact players for them? Because like I like the makeup of their forwards from first line to fourth line. I like their top two defensive pairs. I'm not crazy about the third pair, but then their goaltending I don't think is an issue. Like, Minnesota, I think, is in such a good spot where they have a good team right now. Their goaltending is solidified for the future. They have good contracts in place. They have good prospects coming up. And they have a shit ton of cap space coming up next offseason.
But that's next offseason. We're talking about them making the playoffs this year.
But I'm talking about them right now. I still like the makeup of their team right now. Like I said, I like their forwards top to bottom. I like the prospects that can maybe come up and make an impact and jump into the lineup. I like their top two defensive pairs really good. And their goaltending, I think, is totally fine. I think it's in the top half of the league.
Probably.
So they're probably not going to lock in a central spot, but I think they're going to be a wild card team.
I definitely think it's possible, but they're going to be fighting a lot of teams for it. I think Dallas and Winnipeg, they're making it in Central Division spots. Nashville's got to be making it in there, I think, after the moves they made this past year. So now there's only 2 wild card spots in the West, and they've got to be fighting any one of Colorado, LA, the Golden Knights. If the Kraken are in that wild card spot hunt, them as well. Like,
yeah, I see Minnesota taking one of them.
I don't know.
I'm locking it in. That's my pick. No, that's my pick. I'm locking it in. I'm going Minnesota making the playoffs.
I mean, I said it too in the hot takes video, but I'm thinking what is more likely, and I think probably not. But I definitely believe it could happen.
I'm sticking on the side that I'm going with it. And then the last one, obviously, who on the team is most likely to win an individual award?
This one's really interesting because there are genuinely quite a few ways you can go with it. That being said, I am going to go with Joel Eriksson Ek winning the Selke Trophy. I think
with the Selke. It's a good pick.
I think that's the
solid.
most. I think that's the most likely in the current form of the NHL.
I kind of think it is too. Like I'm trying to think of like, maybe Kaprizov for the Hart if they make the playoffs. Like
that was
kind of
my
thought
other
the
one.
Rocket, but I was like, there's no way he's winning the Rocket with Matthews and Pasta. And if I'm picking Rantanen to tuck 60,
honestly, it's
I
not
don't
even
see
that.
Kaprizov tucking 60.
I could see Kaprizov doing it, but he can't do it with Zuccarello on his line. And I like Zuccarello, and they have great chemistry. But if you're winning the Rocket, you need Mitch Marner, you need Nicholas Backstrom, right? You need somebody who can feed you pucks all the time.
And I mean, yeah. I mean, I want to do different from you because I'm trying to keep it like we're doing different. Unless there's like a unanimous one, like we both go like Hellebuck for Vezina again or something. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with Kaprizov for the Hart. I think if Minnesota makes the playoffs,
it was right there for me.
Kaprizov has a great season. I think you could make the argument for he could potentially win the Hart as long as it's not something like Minnesota makes the playoffs, he puts up 110 points, but again you got guys dropping 140 maybe 150 points because then there's no chance. But assuming Kaprizov can kind of stay in the mix of the top point getters in the league and Minnesota makes it, you can make an argument for it. So
yeah. And you know what? Honestly, Brock Faber for the Norris, isn't an insane.
I think it's a little too soon for that.
I definitely think so, but I don't think is it that much crazier than saying Kaprizov for Hart or Eriksson Ek for Selke?
I guess
as soon as
probably
this year.
Not. Probably not actually. Yeah, you are right.
Because I think Eriksson Ek could win. I think he might win a Selke, legitimately win a Selke in his career, but next year, I don't know if I know about it. And
yeah,
that's pretty much how I feel about Faber and the Norris. Maybe at some point, probably not next year.
Yeah. I completely actually see where you're coming from.
We got options.
But long process to get here, but I think that does wrap up everything we got for this episode. We do want to thank all of you once again for tuning in. We have seen, a lot of support and growth across all platforms over the last 2 months. Really a lot of off-season kind of stuff. You guys have really seemed to be enjoying. And again, any conversations you want to join in with us, you can do so on any of our socials. We are on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, SEU Hockey. Come say hello on there. Come throw us a question. Again, TikTok's been a lot of good discussions going on there. So if you want to join in on any of that, or if this is your first time listening, joining in from any of those discussions, welcome and thank you for tuning in. A lot of that rambling bullshit from me usually. Braden, do you have anything to slap in here before we get out of here, before we take off on our big road trip this weekend?
Oh boy, do I.
We're going to the fuck shack this weekend.
We're going to the
if anyone wants to know. If anyone wants to know where we're going.
Yeah, that's what we call Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I just want to toss in there very quickly. Jesper Wallstedt, RFA next offseason. Didn't know he had even signed an ELC, let alone burned 2 years of it. He's going into year 3 of 3 for it. So,
dude, just gonna lock him up to an 8-year deal. Just severely fucking underpay him.
Yeah, dude, franchise mode deal, like 8 years at $2 million per.
Yeah, why would you say no? Being like, I could make.
You don't want $60 million? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, we'll give it to Fleury then. He'll stick around.
sign Fleury to a 1-year, $6 million contract just to spite him. See, you could have had this money.
Just to slap your nuts on the table and be like, "This is what happens when
And
you don't listen to Big Bill."
Oh, Big Bill. No, but I don't have any actually helpful things to say.
Neither do I. A lot of bullshit from us. That's usual. Classic. You know that. But once again, we really do thank all of you for tuning in. We hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, on any of our socials, if there's a team that we haven't covered yet, we've only covered Minnesota, Seattle, Nashville, Winnipeg. Those are the 4 teams right now. If there is a team you want us to cover, feel free to let us know. Before we get out of here, the draft. Braden, I'd first pick last week, I think. So I will give you first pick this week for Tuesday's episode next week. Who is the team you are drafting for your coverage?
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure there. But there's some really fun teams that we could talk about, and I do want to pick a team from the East because we've talked about 4 Western teams, and I think gonna look at these teams. Yeah, I am going to talk next week about the Philadelphia Flyers.
Fuck you. Oh, fuck you. That's who I had picked. Oh, shit. I had a great build-up. I had a great intro, a great line, everything. You had a 1 in 16 chance, and you cucked me.
Hey, you know what? God, you're. I didn't even ask for it.
I don't know why I gave you first pick.
You just said asshole. Take the first pick. Hey,
you fat loser.
Hey, them's the breaks, buddy.
Man, I had a whole gritty speech and everything lined up. Fuck.
Yeah, well.
Okay, well now you're.
Next
I'm
Tuesday,
on the
I'm
spot
gonna release
here.
A sex tape with them. So.
Please don't.
Yeah.
That's my job.
It's getting hot.
Gritty time. Fuck. All right. I'm put on the spot here now. Let me. Next episode. Just want to pull it up here.
You got it. Do you want me to start listing teams? Because if you're waiting for ESPN to load, it's not gonna.
There's a lot of fat shitters that I don't feel like talking about right now because I'm really hoping they actually make a move.
I have another team.
No. You drafted the Flyers. You cucked me. You put that little wooden chair in the corner and you said sit there. And before I knew it, I was tied up. I'm going to go with a fun team. I don't have a cool build-up for them anymore, but they're a fun team.
We said no more West teams.
Fuck the East. I'm going with the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, they were one of the other teams I was thinking about. They're a real fun team. And
you know what?
Looking at their freaking Puckpedia is a treat.
I X the New Jersey Devils out. Fuck them. I just burned the bridge with that team. I'm doing the Boston Bruins.
Yeah,
I just burned that bridge with New Jersey Devils fans. I'm sorry. You probably got to wait till September now to hear your team. I'm going with the Boston Bruins. I've switched sides. Tom Brady just called me, said, "Hey, man, talk about the Bruins." I said, fuck, how can you say no? How can you say no?
Adam Sandler's listening.
I'm doing the Boston Bruins, the Bees next week.
Don't worry. I see you Devils fans. We'll get to them sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
but not before I talk about the Flyers.
I just burned that bridge. I can't go back to them now.
No, that was brutal.
Shout out Brendan Dillon, but yeah, sorry New Jersey. But now that officially wraps up everything we have for this episode. If you enjoyed watching Braden cuck me live on the air here, feel free to let us know. Again, any of our socials, any teams you want to see sooner, let us know. We hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to tune in on Tuesday because we will have full coverage on the offseason from both the Philadelphia Flyers and the Boston Bruins. We will see you guys then.